The great Celestian Empire did not expand by accident. Its reach was guided by ancient councils, by scholars who charted the currents of the void, and by generals who believed in manifest cosmic order. For millennia, the empire had honored an unspoken code. No species should emerge unbidden into its dominion. Those who sought passage through its territories were met with ceremony, invitations, or, if they insisted, swift and terrible judgment. On an unremarkable morning in Earth's year 2137, deep space listening arrays on Luna Prime registered a faint, repeating pattern and embroidery of mathematics, so elegant it could not have been natural. In the conference room of the United Terran Federation, Director Mei Lin Zhu studied the holographic readout. The signal's oscillations followed the Fibonacci sequence, then diverged into prime-based encryption. It was a call intentional, precise and unmistakable. For weeks, Federation analysts cataloged the transmissions, decrypting layer upon layer of quantum-encoded subroutines. When the message finally resolved, it was brief. To the nascent reachers of light, you trespass in the Andromeda expanse. Depart at once. Persist at your peril. Most of Earth's governments dismissed the communique as a prank, the malicious, handiwork of xenophobes or fringe militarists. Social media erupted with memes of space goblins, jokes of alien spam, and heated debates over whether humanity was sufficiently advanced to merit extraterrestrial interest. The Federation, mindful of internal politics and desperate to avoid panic, issued a cautious press release acknowledging the signal's authenticity, but promising that no hostile intent has yet been detected. Behind closed doors, however, alarm bells rang. Admiral Kara Jin, newly appointed to oversee interstellar liaison programs, convened an emergency council. If this is genuine, she warned, we're already trespassing, or at least on the edge of doing so. We have only two choices: withdraw our experimental probes, or risk provoking a force that could melt every major city on Earth in a heartbeat. Probe Fleet, a ragtag assembly of converted science vessels, was still months away from the Empire's boundary. The Epsilon Eridani Corridor, humanity's narrow gateway into the wider galaxy, lay less than 12 light-years beyond Sol. Thoughtful voices urged caution. Expansionist factions clamored for opportunity. In the end, the Federation Council issued a directive to pause all deep space missions beyond 0.5 light-years outside the solar system, a compromise meant to placate the Empire without conceding. Overly much, it was too little, far too late. On the fringes of Epsilon Eridani, the Pathfinder-class vessel, Odysseus, its hull, pocked with the stress fractures of accelerated trials, picked up an unmistakable signature: a patrol frigate of the Celestian Empire. Built from crystalline carbon alloys, the frigate glimmered against the backdrop of the red dwarf star. Its form was elegant slender prow, sweeping wing-like stabilizers, and an array of sensors that blinked like probing eyes. Captain Rafael Vega, fresh from a textbook appointment, stared at the view screen. His voice wavered only slightly as he addressed his bridge crew. "They're here," he said, "and they're not sending a hello." Behind him, Lieutenant Navya Patel tapped at her console, fingers dancing as she broadcast a standard greeting beacon: call sign, registry, and an offer of peaceful trade. The message launched in 3 dimensions, looping insistently through subspace channels. Space should have been silent once that finished. No hostile intent, the Federation had assured everyone, but instead there came an answer. First, there were ghosts, dozens of small drones, triangular and nearly invisible, darting around the Odysseus like sentinel wasps. Then came the frigate's transmission, its tone flat, ancient, and final. Withdrawal is mandatory. Compliance within 72 hours. Failure to depart will be met with punitive action. Diplomatic protocol demanded that Captain Vega await. Further instructions, but the bridge felt the shift in atmosphere. Ensign Malek said too softly, "They expect us to run." The word hung in the stale, recycled air. A fractured chorus erupted behind him. Proposals to comply, to attempt negotiation, to send a stronger message of deterrence. Maps of trade routes, fuel caches, and colony claims flickered across the overhead screens. But before any decision could solidify, the frigate unleashed a demonstration. Without warning, violet beams lanced across the void. One struck the Odysseys' port engine, igniting a ribbon of flame along its containment coils. Alarm screamed. The ship twisted off course, its inertial dampeners flaring as they fought to stabilize the sudden yaw. Vega's knuckles whitened around the armrest. "Report," he barked. "Port drive is offline," Patel cried. "Hull breach in section C4. Integrity at 60%. In that moment, the reality crystallized. The Celestian Empire's warning was not idle. What they threatened, they were prepared to execute. And humanity's response would shape the fate of both worlds. Back on Earth, the transmission feed went viral. Late-night news anchors stuttered through commentary as partial feeds from the Odysseus relayed the moment when plasma fire flickered against a human vessel. Populations in megacities across the globe stopped commuters, office workers, children, in classrooms forced to watch what felt like the first chapter of humanity's end dot in the corridors of power. Politicians and warlords conferred behind armored doors. Economies braced for the cost of mobilization. Shipyards ramped up production schedules. Private militias offered their services for sky-high fees. Even the scientific consortiums, once loath to divert resources to military applications, retooled. Their research, quantum com relays became encrypted battle nets. Terraforming stations readied for emergency evacuations. Yet the most poignant response came from ordinary people. In the factories of Europa City, welders paused to send prayers through their helmets. On the streets of New Shanghai, protesters clashed with police, some demanding immediate retaliation, others begging for continued diplomacy. Faith leaders of every creed pleaded for restraint lest humanity become monsters in the wider cosmos. Somewhere, adrift between Epsilon Eridani and the silvery glow of the Orion Arm, the Odysseus limped toward Earth with shattered plating and a single urgent mission: to prove that humanity would not bow, and to discover whether the Empire was friend or foe. In their crystalline halls, the Celestian Senate debated the next move. The warning had been clear. The demonstration, unfortunate but necessary to preserve the sanctity of Empire space. Now the question was whether to press the attack or to calibrate a new, subtler approach. Some spoke of recruiting humans as vassals, useful captives for the Empire's endless ambitions. Others, scarred by wars with species that hid bioweapons on board their ships, insisted on total eradication. On a balcony overlooking the glowing spires of Celesta Major, Chancellor, Arctis Lysandra watched the stars. "They are clever," he murmured to his aide, "and brave. But do they deserve mercy? We warned them. We told them, don't do this." Above them, the twin moons of the Empire slanted across the night sky, silent witnesses to a decision that would resonate across light years. Below, the Senate's chamber lights pulsed in anticipation. The gears of war were already in motion, and neither side could turn back now. Thus the Empire's first battle with humans loomed on the horizon, an irrevocable clash of ideologies, wills, and galactic futures. The warning had been issued. Now, fate would decide whether humanity's audacity would conquer or condemn them. The aftershocks of Meridian's first tremor rippled through two civilizations. On Earth, every news holo carried the scarred visage of Odysseus, its hull blackened and eyes of battered sensors dimmed. Across the void, in crystal-lit chambers. On Celesta Major, the Empire's High Council reconstructed holographic shreds of date each burst of plasma, each fracture in the Odysseus's frame debating whether it signified defiance or mere incompetence. 1. Council of Celesta. In the Grand Hall of Mirrors, where every surface reflected facets of light, the 12 members of the High Council sat arrayed in a circle. Chancellor Arctis Lyssandra's voice resonated against the facets. Their ships withstand our punishments better than predicted. They repair, regroup, and send defiant messages. This is no fledgling species struck senseless by terror. They have teeth. Counselor Myra Thalios, draped in a robe spun from nebular dust, tapped a crystalline tablet. Projected in midair floated a ledger of human responses, intercepted transmissions praising their undying courage and calls for planetary mobilization. They rally around a fallen vessel like we would around a martyr, she said. There, failure becomes a clarion call, not a deterrent. Across the circle, veteran military strategist Counselor Zine Voss clenched his gaunted fingers. All the more reason to strike decisively at their home world. Let them taste fear where they feel it most. We cannot allow this contagion of spirit to spread. A hushed murmur passed through the chamber. Chancellor Lysandra raised a hand. We warned them, he reminded them. Yet mercy might yet serve the Empire's interests more than annihilation. Enslaving 10 billion minds or obliterating them both carry costs. Perhaps we can bend them to our will, grant them vassal status under strict terms. From the far end, Counselor Rennie Cairo, a diplomat once famed for pacifying the Zevrax rebellion, spoke quietly. If we break their will wholesale, the vacuum will birth something far more dangerous, an uncompromising hatred that echoes across centuries. But if we offer them a sliver of hope, an alliance in name only, they become dependent on us. As debates unfurled, Chancellor Lysandra observed the play of light and shadow. These discussions would chart the Empire's course. Allies of mercy whispered of futures where humans bolstered imperial science fleets. Hawks of retribution warned of a species that knew nothing of cosmic order, but would learn all its horrors. 2. Earth's hollow triumph back on Earth. The United Terran Federation had convened the Emergency Defense Assembly. Holographic displays of the Astrum Vindicta and the crippled Odysseus spun side by side in burning contrast. Admiral Kara Jin stood at the dais, her expression tempered by dark circles and steel resolve. We have weathered their initial salvo, she declared, voice echoing through the assembly chamber. Our losses were severe, but far from crippling. We are united in grief, but we must unify in action. I propose immediate commissioning of 2 new Pathfinder battle groups dedicated to defensive patrols along the Epsilon Aragani corridor. Congressional delegates erupted in partisan bickering. Some argued the funds would bankrupt Earth's overextended economy. Others demanded the forging of alliances with off-world colonies like Nova Terra and Titan Station. A coalition of planetary governors petitioned for unprecedented autonomy in raising militia regiments. Amid the clamor, civilian sentiment surged. Rallies marched through the neon district of New Shanghai, carrying banners reading "Stand Fast" and "No Surrender." On Europa City's hydroponic terraces, over 100,000 voices joined in a chorus prayer for peace, an odd harmony of chapel hymns and coded gamer chants. The planet itself seemed to tremble with both pride and terror. Admiral Jin, sensing the fracturing, Unity convened a select council of scientists, diplomats, and strategists in the subterranean war room known as the Iron Spire. There, away from media glare, she charged them with 2 parallel missions: accelerate humanity's defensive technologies and reopen discrete channels of communication with pro-Empire factions rumored to exist within Celesta's bureaucracy. 3. Shadows of espionage unbeknownst to most. The Federation's intelligence directorate had already planted operatives aboard, neutral freighters traversing the Epsilon corridor. Chief among them was Agent Mirko Danilov, former terraforming specialist turned spy. Under the cover of calibrating environmental sensors, Danilov slipped into Alliance-class docks on the Moon. Kanto's four-ware fringe merchants traded in Imperial relics. Over chipped ceramic tables lit by flickering neon, he met Seren Vel, a half-empire, half-human informant whose family had fled Celesta decades ago. Vel slid a small crystalline shard across the table. "A sample of their com encryption," she whispered. "They're debating whether to escalate against Earth or to soften U.S. into becoming auxiliaries. They believe we lack the will to fight for our world." Danilov's gloved hand hovered above the shard. The implications were vast. If the humans could prove Imperial hesitation, they might fracture the High Council's unity. Yet, transmitting the data risked exposure and an immediate wave of Imperial reprisals. Every choice laid the Federation's fate on a razor's edge. 4. Forging weapons of light deep within Luna Prime's orbital foundries. The master engineer Dr. Hana Cho oversaw the assembly of the first phasebreaker, Cannon's weapons designed to shatter the crystalline shields of Imperial vessels. Parallel teams on Mars's glass domes tested adaptive deflector arrays that could realign in real time to incoming orbital weaponry. Dr. Cho, her sight obscured by augmented reality visors, turned to her lead assistant. "If these arrays can maintain coherence under 10 meganewtons of stress, we'll have a fighting chance. But if they fail, our ships will burn like Icarus in a solar flare." Outside the dome, leaking air alarms signaled a minor rupture. Technicians evacuated in practiced silence, sealing the breach and resuming tests within the hour. Human ingenuity thrived under pressure. Welded with desperation, these machines embodied the species' indomitable spirit. 5. The Empire's covert maneuvers. Meanwhile, on the icy moon of Thalar, Imperial shipyards lurked beneath frozen crusts. Admiral Silas Reener oversaw the retrofitting of Spectral Infiltrator, corvette stealth vessels designed to slip behind enemy lines. His mission: plant sabotage teams on human supply depots, sever communication relays, and sow disinformation. The High Council's hawks were winning the debate. If humans could not be cowed by open force alone, they must be broken from within. On board the flagship Knight's Judgment, Reener addressed his officers in a dimly lit briefing room. "We do not seek mere victory," he intoned. "We seek an end to their delusions. Strike where they bleed unseen fuel reserves, command nodes, morale. When their worlds shudder from the inside, they will beg the Empire for salvation." 6. The edge of Wara's starships and spies. Politicians and engineers raced to outmaneuver one another. An uneasy lull settled over the Epsilon corridor. Radiation belts shimmered. Gas giants exhaled pale storms, and in the silent void, scout drones from both sides drifted like ghostly witnesses. Each probe carried data thermal signatures, gravimetric readings, encrypted signals building a mosaic of understanding that no diplomat, no council, no spy could fully control. In the pauses between transmissions, humans and Imperials alike caught glimpses of the other, a flicker of movement on a corvette's hull, a pattern of code reminiscent of home, a crest painted hastily over a trooper's armor. They each recognized, across the gulf of space, that their adversary mirrored their own strengths and fears. On Earth, Admiral Jin stood on a balcony overlooking Luna Prime's volcanic glow. "We prepare for war, but we do not have to become war itself," she said quietly to her aide. "Remember who we are fighting for. Not hatred or conquest, but the right to exist on our own terms." And far above, in the crystalline spires of Celesta Major, Chancellor Lysandra watched an artificial comet trace a silver arc across the sky. "We warned them," he whispered, "yet they refused. Now the storm descends, and only the strongest will shape its fury. The gathering storm churned, an amalgam of steel and crystal, of hope and dread. When the first thunderclap tore the heavens, it would announce not just a battle, but the reckoning of two civilizations on a collision course through the stars. The orbital rings of Meridian Station glowed like a shattered pearl against the ink-black canvas of space. Dozens of docking ports linked the great habitat's inner structure to the bustling commercial spines that flared with thrusters as cargo. Ships ferried goods from countless worlds. For centuries, Meridian's shimmering biodomes and gravity gardens had been a hub of trade and diplomacy, until now. Dawn of battle at 4:17 Galactic Standard Time. Alarms blared across Meridian's control decks. The station's panoramic. Monitors rippled with incoming sensor sweeps, a formation of Celestian frigates, cruisers, and corvettes materializing from hyperspace. Their arrival was silent, sudden, and wholly unforgiving. Commander Elena Reyes, Meridian's chief operations officer, watched through bleary eyes as the first ionic bolts lanced across her display. "Shields up to 60%. 50. 40. She called into her comlink, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Around her, technicians fought to reroute power from life support and environmental systems to the station's phased shield grid. On the command dais, Admiral Kara Jin's transmission crackled through the emergency loop. "Stand your ground," she ordered calmly. "Protect the civilians. We'll divert reinforcements through the Tethys corridor within the hour. Do not let them breach the core." But within moments, Meridian's defenses were tested. The Celestian flagship Astrum Vindicta ITS, crystalline hull gleaming with violet striations, unleashed a concentrated salve of plasma. One volley struck the eastern biodome, causing a chain reaction of ruptured habitat domes. Fog banks of compressed oxygen and vaporized flora whipped through torn bulkheads, sending screening clouds of displaced air into the void. 2. Human Retaliation Lieutenant Commander Jason Malik, captain of the patrol frigate Vigilant, had responded to Meridian's distress call at maximum impulse. He pivoted his vessel between the station and the Empire's assault line, cutting the vacuum with twin torpedo volleys aimed precisely at the Vindicta's sensor arrays. Explosions blossomed like fireflowers across its starboard flank, and the flagship's shields shimmered under the strain. "Direct hit," Malik shouted. "We've blinded their targeting vector." The Vigilant shuddered under retaliatory fire. However, its reinforced phase shields held fast. "Maintain position. Draw their focus away from the station." Across the void, human destroyers and cruisers formed into an improvised defensive ring around Meridian. The Argonaut, Centurion, and Perseus slipped into energy slings, redirecting. Spent plasma back at the enemy. In that fleeting moment of defiance, human ingenuity shone brightest payloads of magnetic minefields, localized gravitic wells, and electromagnetic pulse drones proved that Earth's military-industrial complex could innovate under pressure. 3. Boarding shadows, despite the defensive mesh, the Empire unleashed its most insidious tactic, the silent boarding shuttle. Tens of sleek, oblong craft, their hulls etched with iridescent runes, drifted unobserved through masked sensor gaps. They latched onto Meridian's maintenance airlocks and vented out the station's oxygen as they forced entry. Sergeant Aisha Patel, leader of Meridian's security battalion, received the alert only when power flickered in the eastern corridors. Pressure breach detected. Her helmet radioed. Gripping her plasma carbine, she rallied a dozen Troopers Nixed volunteers from Titan Station, Marines and Earth's planetary rangers, and raced toward the intrusion site, in the dim red glow of emergency lighting. Patel's squad confronted the first wave of Empire Marines, their crystal-forged armor reflecting the alarms like blood in a prism. The firefight was sudden and savage. Phased blades sliced through reinforced plating, and plasma bolts ricocheted down the corridor. Patel's lieutenant, Jax Wu, was thrown back by a concussive blast, and 2 Rangers went down, shielding a frightened maintenance droid. "Fall back to the service junction," Patel barked. "Seal the secondary bulkheads. Focus on containment, don't. Let them reach the biodomes." Yet as they retreated, 1 crystal shock grenade tore through the hatchways, shattering comlinks and rupturing Patel's visor. She felt the hiss of embers against her faceplate as she reeled, vision fracturing into rainbow fragments. 4. Civilian exodus. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of civilians, tourists, traders, and station-born colonists floated tethered in refuges, or sprinted through pressurized evacuations tubes. Parents lashed children into gravity cradles. Merchants loaded precious goods onto escape barges. In the main arboretum, hydroponic gardens writhed in the aftershocks of hull breaches, and the station's grand glass dome cracked under the force of a stray plasma bolt. Dr. Orlando Suresh, the arboretum's chief botanist, shepherded a group of schoolchildren to safety tunnels. "Stay low and keep breathing evenly," she coached, her gloved hand guiding small fingers through the chaos. As the dome's framework groaned, she could feel the tremors resonate through her boots, each quake a reminder that Meridian itself was UNRAVELLING. In the crowd, a young couple off-world colonists from New Eden embraced their newborn inside a sealed stasis cocoon. Their relief at surviving the initial onslaught was tempered by sorrow. Their home, a place of fresh life and second chances, was now a battlefield. 5. The turning tide above the station's equatorial belt, the tide of battle shifted. Captain Vega, now reassigned from the Odysseus despite his injuries, commanded the newly arrived Pathfinder Alpha Flotilla. His voice cut through the com channels. "All battle groups converge on Meridian's defense perimeter. Focus fire on the cruisers. Prioritize breaking their formation." Human ships unleashed a synchronized barrage. Polychromatic torpedoes streaked toward the Empire's corvettes, and quantum disruptor beams danced across cruiser hulls. Explosions blossomed in slow motion, each one fracturing the crystalline armor of enemy vessels. Despite suffering heavy casualties, the Nightfire lost its port engine, and the Loyalists drifted dead in space-human resolve hardened. As the Empire's cruisers faltered, human fighters swarmed in squadrons of 80, strafing boarding shuttles and strafing key gunnery emplacements on Meridian's exterior. In the command bridge of the Astrum Vindicta, Counselor Zine Voss watched the dance of explosions with thin-lipped fury. "They fight with desperation," he hissed. "Let them bleed. We have battle cruisers en route. This engagement ends on our terms." 6. A moment of humanity just as the battle reached its apex. An unlikely transmission cracked into the comm mesh. No encryption, no codes, just a single voice, raw and unvarnished. "All Celestian vessels, cease fire." Silence fell across the battlefield as the words echoed through both fleets. The human captains hesitated, relaying the order. On Meridian's shattered rings, crews paused in mid-repair. Soldiers braced behind sandbags. Guns half-dash raised. Captain Vega recognized the voice. Admiral Silas Reener of the Knight's Judgment, the covert strategist of Fowler's shipyards. He keyed his mic, eyes scanning the vacated vectors where enemy ships hovered in wait. "We issue this ceasefire to assess damages and negotiate terms," Reener's voice continued. "No further hostilities without High Council confirmation." In that pregnant pause, both commanders weighed their next move. Humanity could press the assault now, potentially crippling the Vindicta beyond repair, but at the risk of shattering any hope of diplomacy. The Empire could resume the attack at any moment, using the lull to realign their formations and ready a final strike. 7. Aftermath of the Clash Meridian station, though battered, remained intact. its central core housing the power reactors, and command nexus was unbreached. Yet the outer rings hung in fractured disarray, docking arms torn away, habitat domes ruptured, and escape pods drifting toward the void like fallen leaves. The station's grand beacon, once a symbol of unity, now slumped at half power. Casualties on both sides numbered in the tens of thousands. Thousands more civilian refugees drifted through emergency corridors, dazed and mute. The human fleet had demonstrated unity and resolve. The Empire had shown adaptability and ruthlessness. Both had learned that victory would exact a toll far beyond metal and ordnance. On Meridian's command deck, Commander Reyes addressed the survivors. "We held the line," she said, voice trembling with both grief and pride. "We protected our home, but this is only the beginning." The Empire withdrew, but they did not retreat. We must prepare for what comes next. Admiral Jin's face flickered on the holo display. "Meridian withstands," she said softly. "We'll negotiate from strength. Use this ceasefire to shore up defenses, to tend the wounded, and to craft our demands. Humanity has spoken its defiance. Now let the Empire reckon with the cost of its own fury." As the battered fleets withdrew to their respective staging, Ground's Meridian Station drifted in the light of its twin suns, scarred but unbroken. Below, the inhabitants tasted both victory and loss. Above, the silent void awaited the next chapter. The clash at Meridian Station had been the first true battle of two empires, the venerable Celestian Empire and the defiant human civilization. Each had tested the other's mettle, and each had emerged forever changed. In the quiet aftermath, both sides grappled with a singular truth. War was no longer a distant abstraction, but an immediate, visceral reality, one that would shape the destiny of countless worlds. The vacuum around Meridian Station grew eerily quiet once the last of the Celestian vessels slipped beyond sensor range. In the flattened calm that followed, both human and Imperial survivors confronted truths deeper than shattered hulls and smoldering corridors. Each side would now reckon with the consequences of their own defiance, and the price exacted by War. 1, the political divide on Earth. World leaders convened the Emergency Unity Summit in the glass-domed Palace of Assemblies. Delegates from every nation once bitterly divided over climate treaties, trade tariffs, and cultural disputes now stood shoulder to shoulder behind the battered banner of the United Terran Federation. Admiral Kara Jin, flanked by Dr. Hana Cho and Agent Mirko Danilov, addressed the assembly. "We have weathered the first storm, but our task is only beginning. Meridian Station still stands, but its wounds are deep. We must transform our unity in battle into unity of purpose in peace. Let us not become prisoners of vengeance." Opposition voices rose, calling for an all-out retaliation that would raise Celestian worlds to the ground. Others demurred, warning that total war would doom billions more to death and devastation. After 10 days of impassioned debate, the summit yielded the Meridian Accords, a conditional ceasefire anchored by 3 pillars: human sovereignty, mutual de-escalation, and the reopening of dialogue under neutral arbitration. Yet even as the accords were signed, protests erupted in the neon district of New Shanghai and the skyscrapers of New Mumbai. Many citizens felt the government had betrayed them by negotiating with an enemy that had murdered their neighbors. Across Earth's moon and Mars's domes, militias swore they would support no treaty that left the Empire's threat standing point 2, a fragile truce thousands of light years away. On Celesta Major, Chancellor Arctis Lysandra reconvened the High Council beneath the vaulted prison ceiling. The Meridian Accords lay before them as a jagged wound in the Empire's long-standing sense of superiority. Counselor Myra Thalios, her voice echoing like a crystal bell, demanded retribution. We bent our might to show them mercy, and they would bargain from a place of injured pride. What precedent do we set if we tolerate a species that believes it can stand toe-to-toe with the Empire? Conversely, Councillor Rennie Cairo argued for cautious compromise, the Accords by us. Time and preserve the Empire's image as just rulers. We will monitor human compliance, and if they breach the treaty, even in the slightest, we shall unleash a punitive expedition unlike any before. In the end, the Council adopted a watchful peace. Patrol frigates would shadow human battlegroups. Covert spectral infiltrators would continue to undermine Earth's war machine, and scientific envoys would resume data exchanges, albeit under strict censorship. The Empire's public edicts hailed friendship renewed, but in the shadowed corridors, the engines of war continued to churn. 3. Shadows of rebellion. Not all Imperials embraced the Council's decision. In the crystalline labyrinths beneath Celestis, surface, an underground resistance known as the Echo of the First Warning began to take shape. Composed of young officers disillusioned by the High Council's duplicity, they believed humans were potential allies, co-architects of a greater cosmic order, rather than mere subjects to be subdued. Led by Lieutenant Kale Syra, a former cadet instructor who had witnessed the compassion of human medics on Meridian's battered rings, the Echo pilfered classified schematics for joint research projects. They transmitted encrypted messages to Agent Sarenvel on Kantos IV. If we extend a hand in genuine friendship, they may walk with us. Do not let the hawks of punishment condemn us all. Sarenvel risked her life ferrying these messages aboard smuggler vessels, fueling a web of clandestine hope. On Earth, Ambassador Lena Torres, prime signatory of the Meridian Accords, received the transmissions and, recognizing their significance, fed them into the Federation's most secure vaults. For a fleeting moment, both species glimpsed the possibility of real reconciliation. 4. The price of defiance, yet hope was not without cost. On Mars, Dr. Hana Cho's teams worked around the clock to refine the phasebreaker cannons and adaptive deflector arrays. Their tests, broadcast across Earth's holonets, served as both reassurance and warning. Humanity would not remain defenseless. Each successful trial bolstered morale, but each experimental failure also claimed lives as shattered prototypes exploded in fiery cascades across testing grounds. On Thaler, Admiral Silas Rayner tightened his secret campaign. Spectral infiltrator. Corvettes intercepted civilian transports, replacing vital agricultural supplies with inert decoys. In the remote colony of New Delphi, this sabotage led to food shortages that sparked riots. The Empire's hand remained unseen, but its fingerprints were everywhere. The Federation's intelligence Directorate discovered traces of Imperial interference and debated a proportionate response. Admiral Jin, weary yet resolute, issued a private order. Contain the infiltrations, but do not retaliate overtly. Let our actions prove that we choose stability over vengeance. 5. A new horizon as months passed. Meridian Station's scars healed. Flora engineers replanted crushed gardens. Architects welded new domes. Families returned to replanted corridors. A grand memorial was erected on the ring's inner curvature, an obsidian monolith engraved with the names of both human and Imperial casualties. The inscription read, "Here we stood as enemies. From our losses, let understanding grow." They, first peace delegation from Earth comprising diplomats, scientists, and civilian volunteers, arrived in the Epsilon Erigani system aboard the Unity of Worlds. They docked at Meridian's restored port and initiated face-to-face talks with the somewhat wary Celestian envoy, Counselor Kair. Over shared meals grown in Meridian's biodomes, humans demonstrated their music, art, and humor things no fractal sensor could quantify. Imperials, in turn, shared their crystalline art forms, their ancient poetry woven of light and shadow. Even in the lingering tension, genuine curiosity flickered in both camps. 6. Epilogue. The choice in the quiet. Hours before dawn on Celesta Major, Chancellor Lysandra stood alone on a balcony overlooking the glass spires. Below him, the Celestian Senate chamber glowed with new activity debates on scientific exchange programs, on regulated joint patrols, on cultural festivals to be held on neutral moons. He remembered the warning, "Don't do this." He remembered the crack of plasma on the Odysseys' hull, the screams in Meridian's corridors, the prayers for peace echoing across two civilizations. Now, in the fragile peace they had forged from fire and fear, he understood that warnings were only as good as the will to heed them. His advisor, Counselor Thalios, joined him in silence. "You should be proud," she said softly. "We faced a species as stubborn as ourselves, and we chose restraint." Lysandra nodded, looking to the pale twin moons rising above the capital. "If we can truly build from this moment, we will have earned our legacy. But if either side falls back into hatred, if we unmake this peace, we will doom ourselves in the same folly." Back on Earth, Admiral Kara Jin transmitted her final message of the day. "We stand at a crossroads. Our first battle tested our spirits. Our first peace must test our humanity." As the message faded into the starlit silence, both empires sensed that history would judge them not by the battles they fought, but by the bridges they chose to build. The first chapter of war was written in plasma and crystal. The next would be written in trust, or in its tragic absence. The Empire's first battle with humans had ended not with total victory or utter defeat, but with a dawning realization. The greatest conquest was the courage to extend an olive branch across the void. Whether that branch would blossom or shatter remained the choice of both worlds.